everyone. I am here for my July reading wrap-up. There are still a couple days in July left over, but the opportunity presented itself on this chill Sunday afternoon, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it and just tell you about what I read in July. But then since I have so much that I'm currently reading that won't get finished before the end of July, I thought I could do a brief currently reading tagged on to the end of this. And the very first book that I finished was for my Patreon book club, and that is The Belton Estate by Anthony Trollope. This is a standalone Anthony Trollope book. I completely adored this book. It was just such a breath of fresh air, and I have done a whole review. So I'm not sure if the review will be up before or after this, but I have filmed a review, and you can hear more of my thoughts on it in there. And then I read for my Kindred Spirits book club, Island Magic by Elizabeth Goudge. This is Elizabeth Goudge's first published novel, and I think amongst Goudge fans, it's not as popular. I can see why it wouldn't be as popular. A little bit of the plotting can be clunky, but it still has her beautiful writing, and the island setting really just is a big pull for me, and some of the characters I especially adore in this. So it was really interesting to hear the discussion of the book at the Kindred Spirits Club. It seemed like it was a bit of a mixed experience for everyone, and I really appreciated hearing what everyone had to say. Pretty much everyone, even if they didn't love the book, loved the writing enough that they wanted to move on to more books by Elizabeth Goudge. So I have had The White Witch in my meaning to read very soon stack for sinfully long, and hopefully I will get to it sooner rather than later. The next book that I read is a nonfiction kind of homeschooling educational theory book called The Modern Miss Mason, and Leah Boden is the author, and she has really heavily investigated and looked into and lived out the philosophies of Charlotte Mason. Charlotte Mason was a 19th century educator from England, and had kind of a very different approach towards education than the other educational theorists of her day, and thinks that short lesson times, time out communing in nature, and books that are living, that are not just written like textbooks with cut and dry information, but information written in a beautiful way and that seems relatable and important and like it matters to the students, are kind of some general principles of Charlotte Mason. Another thing is narration. So after a child hears a certain amount of information, you ask them, can you tell me, what do you think this story was saying? What happened in the story? Or what was your favorite part of the story? And it's a special way to help children process the information that they have heard. And Leah Boden talks, it's part memoir and part informational about Charlotte Mason, her life, her theories, and then how it has really brought such an enriching kind of education, and just they've made a beautiful life for their family, and done things in a way they wouldn't have had they not found out about Charlotte Mason. So I do feel a bit hesitant about fully going in with Charlotte Mason's educational philosophies, because part of it is you have to go out in nature so much, and with my chronic illness I just can't do it that often. But in general, I like to strive for the ways that I can achieve kind of more of a Charlotte Mason style that works for our family and for the limitations that I have. And then the next book, and it will be a favorite excuse me, of the year, Summer of the Monkeys. And I read this aloud to my boys, and we were all so very moved by it. I'm incredibly grateful to the librarian that I met when I was just checking out books at my local library, and somehow this book came up, and she said she used to be a teacher, and she thinks she read this aloud around 30 times over the course of her teaching career, because she had a couple different classes that she taught. And she said, it's the best book ever. And I had this on my shelf for a couple of years, and I kept just not making a priority of it, thinking about other books that I wanted to be reading, and it absolutely blew me away. I loved it so much, and it's now going to be a forever, very sentimental summer memory with the boys, reading this aloud to them. It was the first chapter book that I read aloud in a while, because my voice for a while just wasn't able to hold up like that. But this one I was able to, just took it in small chunks, and it was such a special time to read this together with the boys. So I really recommend it. Wilson Rawls, if you recognize the name, he also wrote Where the Red Fern Grows, but this is much, much less sad. This book is all about a character named Jay Barry, and his life over the course of a summer when a group of circus monkeys escapes when their circus train crashes, and him trying to capture the monkeys and all of the things that he does to try to capture it. I think the thing that made this book so special about me is all of the relationships that are in it. So Jay Barry with his younger sister Daisy and his parents, and then he also is very close with his grandparents. Really, really love this book. It's so beautiful. And then I did a reread of Pride and Prejudice. Here's my copy. Pride and Prejudice, and I will show you some illustrations. This book never lets me down, ever. Not once. I love every single character and what they bring to the story. Obviously, I don't like all of the characters, but there's such a colorful cast of characters. And I have to say, this was the first time I found Mr. Darcy really appealing. Every other time that I've read it, he actually has been one of the Austen men that appeal to me kind of the least, because he is so serious. But now I feel like, I don't know how many times in reading this, I really appreciated his character and what just a good man that Darcy is. So it is just unfailingly satisfying being in the world of Pride and Prejudice. And then, in a completely different vein, I read King Lear, the William Shakespeare play, and it was so intense. What's crazy is I watched the trailer for, there's a pretty modern adaptation of King Lear that Anthony Hopkins is in. And they show in the trailer a really violent act being done to someone. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe everything that they're adding in, kind of just extra violence, extra gore. But then I read the play, and no, that bit is in the play. And it was so sobering. So I think my general takeaway from Shakespeare is I do overall enjoy him, but I never feel like reading a ton of Shakespeare in a row. So I had also wanted to read Hamlet this summer. I don't know if it's going to happen now. And I did have a couple film adaptations of King Lear checked out from the library, but after finishing it, it's just so intense. And I definitely, I had a lot more fun reading that than I did A Midsummer Night's Dream. The comedies stress me out more than the tragedies. But the weightiness, I don't know, there's just something about them that I think I'm kind of satiated for the year, and I'm okay with that. Then the next one that I read was an Owl's Nest publisher book, and it is The Queen of Ebenezer. This is a really little gem of a book. And you're following characters while they're in this place called Ebenezer, and it's this swamp, and you are left really confused and without many, many details at the beginning of the story. You're not sure kind of how to process all the information. How did the characters end up in this land where they are? Slowly, more information is unfolded, and it ends up being so beautiful at the end. And what I really appreciated about this story is that it was a really heavy topic that it dealt with, but in a way that it made it it cushioned the blow. And it just, I was very moved by it. So a really special short little book, novella, maybe even a short story. I'm not sure what it technically qualifies as, but yeah, it was just very, very special. So I'm very impressed by everything that Owl's Nest Publishers puts out. Then the next one that I read was for the Follow Us to Fairacre Miss Reade read along. I am one of the hosts of, and it was Summer at Fairacre, and this one was a kind of more middling Miss Reade for me. They do start to blend together a little bit, so that is kind of the one hang up that I have now that we're reading so many right in a row. But it still has Miss Reade's beautiful writing, and I really love the character of Miss Reade and her friendship with her friend Amy, her long-term friend, and also with an elderly woman in the village, Miss Clare. And I just love following the daily comings and goings in Fairacre, and seeing what life is like for all of these different characters and what the school children are doing at the moment. So altogether, it's just, I find it incredibly a very comforting series to be reading. And then the next one that I read, and I have my copy here, yes. And I have an Instagram post I need to put up for this, but this is Not Exactly Love by Devin Brown. This is a new release from Owl's Nest Publishers, and it comes out in August. So I will make sure to link their website down below and a link to Not Exactly Love. This is a book I thoroughly enjoyed. It brings such a smile to my face. So I have to say that when I'm sent review copies, if I don't like a book, I don't talk about it. So if you're hearing me talk about it, that means that I really liked it. And this is written in diary format. Leah Johnson, yes. She's 13 years old, and it says, 13-year-old Leah Johnson suffers from a secret and severe case of semi-requited love, meaning she has a friend who is a boy, but not her boyfriend, but she wishes he was. I was incredibly charmed by this. I found Leah such an endearing character with all of her insecurities. It felt very much like a 13-year-old is telling you about her life. And all of the ups and downs and all of the, some days something, certain days when an exciting thing will happen with her crush, and then another day she's completely devastated because of something that he said. And yeah, Leah Johnson, have to do something. I know this. How do I know? Today, as my mom and I were hitting the last after Christmas sales, we just happened to walk past the Snowflake, a favorite dessert place in town. I happened to look inside, where I just happened to see my best friend Ruby, who just happened to be having hot chocolate with her boyfriend at the semi-secluded back table. And then she's so nerdy, and I love that. She says, if you look up requited and unrequited in the dictionary, which I in actual fact did, this is what you find. Requited, an adjective, something which is returned or repaid in the same manner. Unrequited, an adjective, something which is not returned or repaid in the same manner, as in unrequited love. What you will not find is a listing for semi-requited, a word that means something returned or repaid in somewhat the same manner. And I found her just so endearing. And so she writes in her diary, and she's very excited. There's a Valentine's skate happening. And she is really hoping that love will bloom in that time. So I really loved this. I was so charmed by it, and I highly recommend it. Then the next one that I read is continuing in my very low-key, kind of sluggish pace American Girl project. What happened is I went to the library and checked out so many different story collections, and then I got overwhelmed and I didn't know who to pick from. So the first one that was due back at the library was Kirsten, and so I just went with that and I read the Kirsten story collection. I definitely really enjoyed the pioneer setting where Kirsten and her family are immigrants, and their experience as immigrants, just trying to find housing and adequate income to buy the food and clothing that they need. And I have to say, though, that this was an occurrence in the Felicity books, and even more so in the Kirsten books, where Kirsten lies, and obviously kids lie sometimes, right? Adults lie sometimes. But it's never addressed that it's not okay that she lied. And it even in one instance makes it seem like it is okay. So I really don't like that in a children's book. I think it should always be communicated. Children should not lie, especially to their parents. And that's something in the Vanderbeekers that sometimes it's a little bit gray on. But I did overall really enjoy it. And I'm excited about this project, and I'll tell you about the next American Girl that I'm going to be reading in a moment. And the next book that I read and completely and utterly adored and did an individual book review of was Exile by Loren G. Warnemuende. I think I'm saying it right now, Loren. And I fell so in love with this book. So watch the video review. This is a retelling of the Maid Maleen story, but it's only the very first in the trilogy. And I have just such a glow after reading this book. It's so special, and I just find fairy tale retellings, when they're good, I connect with them on such a deep emotional level, and I hope that others might pick up Exile because I think it is such a special book. And then the last book that I finished, and I will be filming another standalone review for it, and that is The Stokesley Secret by Charlotte Mary Yonge. And this is the final book in my Victober 5-star TBR predictions video that I did back in last October, and is also the 19th Victorian book that I read this year. So I'm getting close to that goal of 25, and we're, just hitting August. So I think it's going to happen. I wasn't sure at the beginning of the year. Those are all the books that I read in the month of July. It started out the month where I was very stressed out about getting to all the book club reads. And then the second half, I actually ended up having a lot of fun with what I read. Clearly, my Jane Austen July was pretty much a failure. I, had several DNFs in that month, several Jane Austen July DNFs, and it totally took any kind of get up and go regarding Jane Austen July away. So that is unfortunate. I absolutely loved rereading Pride and Prejudice, but then I found so many other books that I'm interested in reading that it's okay. It's going to be okay. So next, I haven't started this yet, but I just did want to show you that the next American Girl collection I will be reading is the Molly collection. This is a fan favorite. I feel like the American Girl I hear mentioned the most is Molly, and I'm very much looking forward to reading Molly's story collection. And also, Tiffany at Beautiful Minutia has a summer reading book bingo going, and summer camp is one of the prompts. And I've heard that the Molly summer camp story is fabulous. I'm very excited to get to that. Now, I have reached the halfway point in my read of The Cloister and the Hearth by Charles Reade. This is a Victorian, I think the Victorians would call it a historical romance, and they mean something different than we say today when we say that, but historical fiction, and it's set in, I think it's the 15th century in the Netherlands, but also some in Germany, and it's fascinating and slow going, but because it is challenging, but I'm so happy whenever I do pick it up. I'm very excited to talk about this in more detail. And it was a book I was gifted at Christmas by my dad. I actually tried this a few years ago. It was on my Victober 5-star TBR several years back, and I was not drawn in at all by the first chapter, and I felt overwhelmed by the length. And then this time it's just the right time now for me to read it because I picked it up and was immediately hooked. And now I'm halfway through. There have been some more, sluggish kind of chapters, but I'm still so glad to be reading it. And every time, I never have multiple kind of sloggy chapters in a row. Just overall, very, very pleased with my reading experience of that. Then a book I'm a bit scared to read, and that I'm reading with Christy Lewis. That is The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler. And this is a autobiographical Victorian novel. It wasn't published until 1903, but it was written a couple decades before that. And he was raised, his father was a vicar, and he was an atheist. And this is his kind of critique of the church, the institution of the church. So if it's going to be a kind of impartial critique, I think I will not be that annoyed. But if it is just a bitter diatribe about religion and how his life is so terrible because of religion, I won't enjoy it nearly as much because if he's going to take cheap shots, I'm just not going to be very impressed. So far, I've just read the first few chapters and it is really good. But I wanted to pick a book for Tiffany's summer book bingo for Out of Your Comfort Zone. And even though this is Victorian, since this is coming down very hard against Christianity, I'm like, that is definitely out of my comfort zone. But I want to give it a chance and read it and see what he has to say. So I'm excited that Christy is going to be reading it with me, and hopefully between the two of us we'll enjoy it and really have some good discussions from it. Then the next one that I am reading is The Labors of Hercules Beale. I am so excited about this book. So Gary Schmidt wrote also The Wednesday Wars that I love so much and cannot wait to read in December with the Kindred Spirits Club. This has ticks a lot of the same boxes as The Wednesday Wars. It's got very much the academic feel to it as Hercules is going to a school. But it is set in Cape Cod, which is such a lovely setting, and he goes to the Academy for Environmental Sciences, I think is the name of it. And he's got some interesting neighbors. And there is, though, this underlying layer of grief because a year before the story takes place, Hercules' parents have passed away. So he's being raised by his teenage brother. So far, I am absolutely loving it. I am 85 pages through this. So this is definitely tippity top priority. for this next week because it's going to be due back at the library soon and I don't feel like paying fines for it. Then another book from Owl's Nest Publishers, and that is the Carver and the Queen. This comes out, I know it has it written right here, October 3rd. So definitely my October reading will be otherwise preoccupied. I have started this, and it's based on, I think, a specific, no, it's not a specific fairy tale. I think it's just inspired by Eastern European folklore, more like. So far, so good. The writing is beautiful, and I'm very intrigued by this. So I definitely will speak more about this in the future. And then I have gone ahead and picked up Wandering. I thought I needed to, tidy up my currently reading before, but I could not help myself. So I started Wandering. I'm so excited to be continuing on with the story, but now I will be anxiously waiting until November when Promise comes out. So I am 164 pages through Wandering, and it is very, very good. Very different than Exile because there's freedom of movement in this one. So it's kind of like, whoa, can have elbow room and can stretch out. But some very sobering things have happened within the kingdom of Arden. So very interesting. And then continuing on with my presidential biography project, I went ahead and I got a copy of David McCullough's John Adams. Now I knew I didn't have to get a copy, but I have a feeling I'm going to love this. I didn't love reading a super chunky library book and, having that deadline. Although I should utilize more. I also have a Kindle now. And so kind of when the physical one ran out, I could do the Kindle. Anyhow, all to say, I saw this for $4 on Abe Books and I snapped it up. I'm quite excited to be reading this. So I am hoping to be done with this before October. Ideally, finish with it by the end of August. But I don't know if that's going to happen, if that's realistic. It was on my summer TBR. That's the only reason why I want to be finished by the end of August. So I'm kind of dreading, though, getting to the next one, which is Thomas Jefferson. Very controversial figure. Thank you, as always, for watching. I hope that you are having a fabulous summer of reading. And I have to say, I'm very relieved. Usually at this point, I am very much in a reading slump and completely uninterested in reading anything. I'm going to say that it's because I've been reading Victorian literature steadily throughout the year that I'm not in a reading slump. And that blows my mind. It's so funny because before I would always avoid it because I thought, no, it will ruin Victober. I guess we're going to find out if it ruins Victober. And if I'm not in the mood for any Victorian literature, we will just have to wait and see. So far, though, I'm still very excited for it. I've been filming many videos, and I have an interview coming up on Tuesday that I'm really looking forward to. Thank you, as always, for watching, and I will be back with another video soon. Bye!